This is the Marketing Podcast Network.
Stories influence, teach, and inspire us. But what about the storytellers who create them? Uncorking a Story profiles storytellers to uncover how their background and life experiences influence the stories they create. We learn what motivates them, their path to success, and what fuels them to keep creating. It all starts by asking one simple question: where does your story begin? Welcome to Uncorking a Story. Now here's your host, Mike Carlin.
Well, hello and welcome to Uncorking a Story. My name is Mike Carlin. I'm your host, and I'm excited to introduce you to Cheryl Head. Cheryl is a writer, television producer, and broadcast executive. She's an Anthony Award nominee, a two-time Lambda Literary Award finalist, a three-time Next Generation Indie Book Award finalist, and winner of the Golden Crown Literary Society's Anne Bannon Popular Choice Award. Her books are included in the Detroit Public Library's African American Booklist and in the special collections of the Library of Michigan. Cheryl joins me today to talk about her latest novel, Time's Undoing. Welcome to Uncorking a Story, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Mike. Nice to be with you.
Oh, I'm excited to have you here, Cheryl. And I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody as we begin, which is, Cheryl, where does your story as an author begin?
Oh, that's so interesting. Probably college, I think. I had my first published piece in college. I was a media major, radio, TV, film, and we were writing about the impact of television. And I think the professor did a magazine and published my story. I was so psyched.
That sounds like a really interesting major.
Yeah, you got to, I'm a child of the golden age of television, so I got to watch TV and get degree credit. So watch movies in class and television shows and listen to radio shows. It was a fun course. And, it teaches you a lot about, I think, critical thinking and that kind of thing. I went to a liberal arts college, Wayne State University, and I was pre-law. And I was taking the communications courses, and I got bit by the communications bug and started working in television and doing lots of different kinds of writing.
Yeah, and so law went by the wayside.
Yeah, law's boring.
Well, I'll tell you, I interview a lot of authors on this show who left the profession to pursue a career as a writer or careers in television, things like that.
Yeah.
It sounds like the light went off early enough before you got too big into a
That's right.
career as a lawyer. Well, just tell me a little bit about your kind of writing career as a novelist. When did that start to come to fruition?
Yeah. So I worked in public media, public radio and TV for 30 years, and then I took an early retirement to start to write full time. I started writing a novel while I was at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It was historical fiction. I've always been a storyteller, and I've always worked in the sphere of storytelling, working with other producers and that kind of thing. And I wanted to tell the story of Negro soldiers in World War II. So I started that project. It took me 8 or 9 years, set in 1943. So I wanted to do honor to it. So the research was overwhelming. Decided I wanted to write full time. However, during that process, self-published that first book. Just was glad to get it off my plate. It was sort of a labor of love because my dad had been in World War II. And I felt like the story of the Negro soldier hadn't been fully told. So when I finished, I was just satisfied that it done that, and I was doing consulting work around communications. And then I decided to take a break and to give myself some fun. I would write a mystery because I absolutely love the mysteries on television and mystery novels. And I knocked it out in 4 months, and I was just so self-satisfied. And again, just self-published it. But an indie publisher saw it and asked me to come aboard and to use that first book as part of a series. And so that's how I got started writing full time. It was a lot of kismet, I will say. Yeah.
So 9 years versus 4 months.
Yeah. There you have it.
That's some math that I would do and say, it's a lot more you can do in 4 months. But what was that experience like, kind of working with that indie publisher?
Interesting. That's a good question. Indie publishers, so they get your book printed. They did a really great job of book covers. They had a designer on staff. I think did a really fine job of editing. And then you're on your own, marketing and promotion and all that stuff authors have to do. I really had to wear that hat. Because I had a communications and media background, I knew some of the things to do. But I like learning about wherever I'm working from the inside out. So it gave me lots of room to understand publishing, at least from that small indie publisher landscape. And, I published 6 books in my series, the Charlie Mack Motown Mysteries. And I learned a lot about publishing and doing that, and a lot about the process of doing it. And I think I learned a lot about social media and marketing in doing that. So I'm always looking for half glass full success.
Well, just trying to nail down the social media part of things. I mean, I'm almost 50, and I grew up in the interactive industry. I mean, my first job was in interactive marketing. I can't figure it out. Like, I can't building an audience through social media. And I know people who do it, like my kids. I have 3 20-year-olds. We have triplets. They've got thousands of followers. And I'm like,
wow.
I'm like, what have you done?
Yeah.
What have you done?
Yeah.
Except go to school. Sorry, Grace Patrick. And
I kind of want to know the answer to that question.
Yeah, so do I. They won't tell me the secrets.
Okay.
Apparently it's TikTok.
Yeah, I'm afraid of TikTok, to tell you the truth.
Oh my God. That is true. So, for those 6 books, did you stay with the same indie publisher?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And it was I think we were helping each other, because I was saying to them, you should do this on social media. Do you know about this award? That kind of thing. So we were learning together. The social media thing is a hard nut to crack. And I must admit, I've been practicing dance moves in case I ever do TikTok. So far, I'm not happy with the results, so it may not ever happen.
Oh, I know. So the D'Amelios, Charlie D'Amelio, they were like the big TikTok stars. They're like from one town over here in Connecticut. Wow. Now they left and went to California. But I watched them and I'm like, I have a daughter who dances. I'm like, you're better than them. You're better than them. What are they doing?
I don't know.
What are they doing? I need a class. I need a master class.
Yeah. I really do think it comes down to authenticity. People kind of want to see you bare your soul and see you with all your flaws. I think that's the same thing that happens in our books. If people want to see an authentic character with flaws and warts and has some connection to them, they can see themselves in that character. And it's hard to do when, you're an author and I'm an author. So you're presenting yourself, and you don't want to look out. I've worked a little bit on my hair before.
But authenticity is key. You're absolutely right. And whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, I mean, some people might think, well, with nonfiction, authenticity is more important because you're not making things up. But even with fiction, to have an authentic voice, to not try and pretend. Like, I've tried to write things outside of the genre, which I've had the most success in, which is kind of these quirky mysteries. And I've tried to write the Nicholas Sparks type stuff, which I like to read, and I'm touchy feely, but it doesn't come through. It doesn't come through. Like, my sense of humor, will ruin a pivotal moment. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in that area. But
I wish I could write the dystopian stuff and the fic stuff. It's so hot, and I'm afraid to write YA because I don't want to hurt any children.
It's like I watched all those movies with one of my girls, the Maze Runner and what's the other one? The Catching Fire. She has the bow and arrow. Hunger Games.
I love Hunger Games. I
do too. Yeah, but it takes me to such a dark place. Like, I don't want to live in that place for 4 months or 6 months.
Yeah, but the kids are able to just be in that world and let it go when they're not.
Yeah. Well, what can you tell us about Time's Undoing?
Yeah, well, it was a real departure for me, Mike. After writing the mysteries, it's certainly set in crime fiction, and the publisher made a point of saying that to me. We're really pushing this as crime fiction, but it's based on a true event in my family. And so it's the story of 2 timelines, a story of a Black young journalist in Detroit. I'm from Detroit, who sets off on the quest to discover what happened to her great-grandfather in Birmingham, Alabama, in 1929 who was killed by police officers. The story is very murky in her family. It's gone on, obviously, for decades. She wants to really bring some peace and closure for her grandmother. And, I got started down the path after George Floyd. I walked around with the story for lots of years. I didn't think I had enough facts, enough detail to really write a genuine and authentic story. But I was just compelled to write it after George Floyd. And I found myself in the double narrative, which is also a dual timeline, really just imagining 1929 and then applying kind of my mystery chops to the 2019 contemporary sections. So it was an interesting labor and a different kind of, both sides of the brains were firing, which doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, well, just writing, it's a difficult topic to write about, I'm sure. It's a personal topic for you to write about.
Made it a little harder.
And then just technically writing two timelines, I have to imagine that is just something that I imagine you needed your editor's help on that just to make sure everything is kind of,
Absolutely. Oh, I thought I had finished product, and then the editor, I do like logic maps. I'm definitely a plotter and an outliner and all that, and she spotted inconsistencies, and I'm going like, wow, there's just so much minutia. But I think we got it right. I organically wrote the 29 chapters because just imagining my grandfather's life, and then the 2019 chapters felt more like work.
Yeah. So going back to your grandfather's life and that part of the book, how much research did you do within your own family to really bring that authentically to the page?
Lots of oral histories and phone calls and some videos and some tapings with my mother, who's still alive. She's 95 and lives in St. Pete, Florida. She's, with every passing year, the story gets a little muddier, but she's been telling the story for all our my siblings and I, all our lifetimes. Most of my research went into looking at archives. So I was on Ancestry.com daily. I was on newspapers.com daily, and they turned out to be great resources. Newspapers.com in particular, because there are all these digital assets that are available for both historical newspapers, but also Black historical newspapers. And the Black newspapers did so great a job in the early 20th century of telling the stories of Black life. And so it wasn't that I found particular pieces that pointed to my grandfather's story, although I looked for those, but the environmental and the social and the names and how life really presented itself in 1929, I could just glean from the ads and the articles and the want ads and the notices and the birth notices and the wedding announcements and all those things. In doing that work, however, I found two pivotal documents that my family never had. I found my grandfather's death certificate. We'd never had that in the family. And with that document, I had an accurate date for his death and was able to then really focus my newspaper research, and came across an article in the St. Petersburg Times that named my grandfather, and the headline was "Local Negro Killed by Birmingham Police." So it confirmed my mother's story that she knew, but we never said, "Oh yeah, that's the truth, Mom." And that took me on a path of finding other little documents that pointed to his life there in Birmingham.
Yeah. So I can only imagine the emotional roller coaster you were on while you were putting this novel together. I mean, not just with your grandfather's story and writing that timeline, but also, you mentioned kind of the impact of the death of George Floyd, murder of George Floyd, and it being sort of a, would you consider like a flashpoint for you really, putting this novel together?
Definitely a flashpoint.
Yeah.
I just felt afraid to tackle it before. And I think it was the day of, I determined tomorrow I'm opening my laptop and starting. I don't know how it's going to start. I don't know, what the structure is, but I'm just going to start putting words on the page. And it because I think that story needs to be told especially for young people, that what they're seeing now in excessive force is not a new phenomenon. It is a phenomenon in America, unfortunately, that's happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I think given that context kind of really helps contemporary readers to see that we're not here by happenstance. I think it helps us to think differently about some of the legislation that's before Congress, like right now, like the George Floyd Enforcement Act, which will help municipalities and state law enforcement agencies to really do a good job of vetting who police officers are. I'm not against police officers. I grew up, I'm old, so I grew up when we were, officers would come to our school and they'd be like officer friendly and they'd talk to us about things. And I grew up with that. And my sister's been a police officer. But I do think we have to do a better job of helping cities, helping state and federal law enforcement understand who are the folks taking these jobs. What's the training needed? What's maybe they need sabbaticals like teachers do. It's a tough job. So maybe they need some support around that. So I'm hoping people will look at it and say, it helps me to better understand where we are today.
Yeah. How do you feel that you changed during this writing process? Like personally, did you feel a change within you?
Yes, I felt like I could write at a different level. I've often felt like that writing mysteries, I didn't really, especially the way I approach them, which is with such sense of logic and plot, and not having the person reading it know who did it before, towards the very end, that I didn't really have a chance to write, I was going to say flowery language, but language that's really, interesting and fluid and thought-provoking. I was writing a lot of details, and I've been a reporter, so I tend to write a little bit like that, which really lends itself well to mysteries, in my opinion, some certain kinds of mysteries. But I'm not Elmore Leonard, and I'm not James Burke with these beautiful languid sentences, and I think with that.
Elmore Leonard, like you pick up his novel, it's an Elmore Leonard novel right away.
Know it right away. Yeah.
And it's, to me, they're beautiful. I mean, they're works of art.
Yes.
The stories are always, interesting, but for some reason, when I'm reading him, it takes a while. Like it'll take me a longer time to read one of his pages.
Interesting.
Than somebody else. And I think it's just because of the words he chooses, the structures, the way he paints visually.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. Yeah, and he does it in such a lean manner. I mean, he's not laying a lot of words on the page, but the punctuation, the word selection, and which is 180 degrees from James Lee Burke, which in one of his novels, I once counted an 83-word sentence.
Oh, my goodness.
Both lovely, but different, but in poetry in their own way, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I think of an 83-word sentence, and I see my high school English teacher, Tom Criz, just shaking his head right now.
That's right. I went, wow, this is a long sentence, but wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no kidding. It sounds like an amazing story. I personally can't wait to read it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
No, but I just want to pause talking about it for a minute, because I always say Uncorking a story is the story behind the story, which is the author's story. So I just want to get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
One way I do that is through pop culture, and you kind of mentioned watching TV and movies as listening to radio programs. I'm curious, when you were growing up, or even kind of what sticks out at you as some of your favorite things to watch when either when you were growing up or even when you were kind of going back into that early days of your major.
Yeah. I'm grappling. I have an answer for you, and I'm grappling with the answer because of because of our current social culture. So I grew up watching Westerns with my dad, and I love the genre. I absolutely love it. And it's so full of sexism and racism and misogyny and all that stuff. So, but I'm still watching Gunsmoke on a regular basis because of, they're parables to me. I always like knowing the good guys from the bad guys, and I think I try to help my villains have full personality so you kind of understand them, not necessarily to like them, but to have a certain amount of pathetic response to them, I guess I would say. So I like the leanness of them. I like the stereotypical loner. I think so much of that has resonance with the loners we find as the protagonists in classic mystery and crime fiction, So I have to get over myself sometimes when I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, I probably shouldn't be watching this. Oh, my Native American friends wouldn't like this so much. But I'm vibing a lot right now on that series 1923, 1893 Yellowstone. And I started watching them backwards, and I'm fascinated by the language. His voiceover narrative. And I love the environment. I think the writers really capture that, and all the accoutrement of being a cowboy. I think I'm not a big person around this afterlife stuff, but I think I used to be a cowboy in a previous life. That's the only way I can account for it.
Yeah,
my affinity for it.
It's interesting you say you like clear good guys, clear bad guys. There's part of me that does that too, that appreciates that because it just makes things like easy. Mm-hmm. And I think so much in our culture, just TV wise, like we with the rise of the anti-hero.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of all went away. So in some ways it's almost refreshing sometimes to watch some of that older stuff, problematic as it may be, because nostalgic reasons, but also just because, hey, it's clear, like your brain doesn't have to process
so much
really as much.
That's right. Because I was like really blown away by the Villanelle character in Killing Eve. And she's a psychopath, to be sure, but I really liked her.
Right.
And I liked her outfits and all that stuff. So right. You really have to pull yourself back and go like, yeah, but she's a horrible person.
I watched what was that one about Anna Delvey? One of those ones on Netflix. She was the one she was a con artist basically and conned people out of.
I love grifter shows.
And I'm like, gosh, like she's clearly wrong.
Yes.
But for the way she's written and the way they portrayed her on screen,
right?
You kind of root for her a little bit.
Yeah,
like, she should get away with this.
We're bad.
I don't know. I'll have to go back to church.
But on the hand, Dahmer, I wasn't interested in Dahmer at all.
I didn't do it. I didn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
I didn't do it. What about music? What did you like to listen to?
Okay, so I have pretty eclectic taste in music, and I try to explore everything. So I love a lot of classic rock stuff. Again, I've got this white cowboy stuff in me. So I like Steely Dan a lot. I like all Motown. I grew up in Detroit, so every Motown song is a wonderful classic to me, obviously. My partner likes opera, so we listen to opera on Saturday. But here's the problem, and I don't tell her this. At some point in the opera, I always think caterwauling. The word just pops into my head. So I think I'm not going to ever be an opera buff.
I think opera is good music to cook to. When I had an Italian grandmother, so we would listen to Italian music on Sundays when she taught me how to cook. So I used to. And so I could so that's where it plays in my head.
Interesting. Making a nice tomato sauce? Yeah, I can see that.
Absolutely. And it makes the food taste better.
Absolutely. Well, that's the purpose of it then. Thank you for that.
Yeah, there you go.
Why are we listening to this?
Yeah. I just yes-handed you right there. So there you go.
I'm old, so I just watched Rihanna yesterday on the Super Bowl show, and I'm thinking, I don't know any of these songs. I think I knew one.
Well, I knew the songs, but I'm such like I'm like, is this okay for the baby being that high up? That's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, oh, if she falls, oh my goodness.
You can tell we're parents.
Absolutely. No, but I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, great choreography, I thought.
The choreography was spectacular. It was a visual. It was visually very, very good.
And I love this year's Grammys. I thought it had a nice cross-section of music that I could relate to. I liked Bonnie Raitt. I was happy for Bonnie Raitt.
Yeah.
And I liked watching the 50th anniversary of hip-hop. That was interesting.
I missed the Grammys.
Oh, you should watch it. It was
I was staying with my parents. My parents are 90. I was down in Florida with them last week, and I know the last thing they're going to want to watch is the Grammy Awards. So my wife is texting me. She's like, "Oh my God, are you watching this hip hop thing?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "No. Like, what are you talking about?" She's like, "The Grammys are on." I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And then my kids are blowing up a family group text with whatever was happening with Sam Smith dressed up like the devil.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
The devil. Yes, he was.
I mean, that sounded a tad strange.
Yeah, that was not great.
But whatever. But I missed the Grammys, and I'm kind of bummed about it because I can't. Watching clips is not the same as watching the actual.
Yeah, and YouTube eventually will have the whole thing. You can watch it maybe in a couple of months.
Yeah, there you go. Geez, what else can I ask you? We've talked about so much.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if we've got it all. So let me ask you this then.
Okay.
Big things you've learned about yourself since writing novels, particularly. What are some big lessons you've learned about Cheryl?
I've learned, and I tell people this, I think everybody has a story to tell. I mean, maybe we don't all want to see all of them in print. I think it's important for a writer to find her or his own voice. We talked a little bit about authenticity. I think that's key to it. I hear people say there are no new stories. I just don't believe that. I think there are lots of new stories because there have been a lot of stories omitted from our history. So each time we grab one of those and put it to the forefront, I think it's, gives fodder for more stories like that. So I don't believe that. Writing advice I've gotten was always write what you know, and I hate that advice. I think I want to always write about what gives me passion, what really makes my antennae stick up. And I think I'll always tend to do that. I know I want to write about race and tolerance because I think it's the key factor for America finding itself at the top of its ideals. I believe in this country. And I believe we're one of the few countries that has this conversation. I just want the conversation to be more constant, more focused, so that we can come together and be as great as we can possibly be. And I think I'm Pollyannish, half full glass. So there you have it.
This idea of writing what you know, like part of me gets it and why people say that, but the other part of me is if you're just writing what you know, A, you're going to get bored.
After all,
are you going to learn anything? Are you going to learn anything new?
I always learn new things. So that's why I'm writing Western. I'm trying to write a Western. I'm scared because I don't want to mess it up because I love the genre so much, but I'm giving a contemporary theme. So that's interesting to me. I don't know if I'll ever write spec fiction, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing is not to, put yourself in a box, which you clearly have not done, and just kind of, playing around with genres a little bit. From nonfiction to.
And I believe in, continuing to learn. And so I'm going to probably take a short story class because I like to write short stories, but I don't have it right. And I know I don't have it right. So I want to get that key. So the flip switches and I know how to end the story.
So my last question for you then will be if you could go back in time and whisper some words of advice into your younger self's ear. What would you tell your younger self? And I don't know what age, to give you here, but just what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
I would say, don't rely on being a late bloomer. I think I'd say don't be afraid of the opportunities that put themselves in front of you. Just leap into them. I think I was too cautious in the first half of my life, and I think I would do things a little bit differently. I'm never going to be the person like Rihanna standing on those things, wiggling, hundreds of feet in the air. But I could take more chances, have more adventures, leap at opportunities faster. I think that's important to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the kind of not holding yourself back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very interesting. Well, where can people buy Time's Undoing?
Anywhere fine books are sold. And literally, I'm so pleased that my book will be in Walmart. That's my sign of success. My big sign of success, Mike, is when my book is in that rotating wire rack at the airport gift shop. That's when I know I've made it.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was traveling somewhere with one of my books to give it to somebody, and I was in the airport bookshop, and I just put it on the rack. Just.
I'm gonna do that.
But then I snapped a picture of it and I put it up on social media. And somebody's like, "Oh my God, you've come such a long way." I'm like, "No, I put that there. I'm just."
Hey, what's wrong with that? It's called distribution.
That's a creative distribution. I'm not above it. Well, this has been fun, Cheryl. Do you have a website or social media handles you want to share?
You can find me. The FBI can find me. I have nothing to hide. CherylHead.com. I'm C Head Writes on Instagram, CHEADDC at Twitter. I'm kind of an open book.
All right. Very good. Cheryl, thank you for stopping by Uncorking the Story and letting me uncork yours.
Nice to talk to you. It was a great way to start a Monday.
Thanks for listening to Uncorking a Story. If you'd like more information about today's guest or to find out more about Mike, go to uncorkingastory.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in every week to hear Mike Carlin uncork a new story.